Everyone in that room was looking at her, but not for the reason you think. It was supposed to be Carey Mulligan's moment. Elegant, historic, honestly, long overdue. A woman who has spent 2 decades doing some of the finest work in film, finally getting the kind of recognition that stops people in their tracks. But then something unexpected happened. Because just as the cameras settled, Meghan walked in, and suddenly the attention shifted. Was it intentional, or just one of those moments that nobody planned but everybody noticed? Stay with me, because this story has layers that the headlines completely missed. And if you want this kind of breakdown every week, subscribe right now. One tap, I will be here. Right, let's go back to the beginning, because you need the full picture before the moment makes sense. March 31st, 2026, Windsor Castle. The kind of building that makes everything happening inside it feel significant before a single word is spoken. Carey Mulligan walked in that day to receive a CBE, Commander of the Order of the British Empire, awarded by King Charles himself for services to drama. Think about what that means for a second. Not the ceremony, the career behind it. An education, The Great Gatsby, Promising Young Woman, Inside Llewyn Davis, 3 Oscar nominations, a BAFTA, decades of work that the industry respects in the specific, quiet way it reserves for people who are genuinely good rather than just famous. She was joined by her husband, Marcus Mumford. She stood in front of the king, she received the honor, and afterwards she said something that stayed with me. She said, "I feel so unbelievably lucky to get to do a job I really, really love. To have this kind of recognition on top is just sort of extraordinary to me." That is not someone performing gratitude. That is someone who actually means it. No drama, no big statement, just a woman who spent 20 years doing the work and finally got the moment. At least, that was the plan. But here is where things get interesting. 10 days later, Montecito, California, the home of Netflix CEO Ted Sarandos, an intimate evening celebrating the launch of Beef Season 2, the show that Carey Mulligan was headlining. Her room, her night, her people. And throughout the entire press tour for this show, every interview, every appearance, every photograph, Carey had been wearing chartreuse, that specific, vivid yellow-green that fashion had claimed as the color of spring 2026. It had become her visual identity for this chapter. When you saw chartreuse, you thought of her, of this show, of this moment. So she arrived at her own party in her own color for her own show. And then Meghan walked in. Same shade, different woman. Now, before anything else, I want to say something that I think matters. The dress code story that went viral, the claim that the whole room was supposed to be black and white and Meghan broke the rules, that part is not fully accurate. Other guests wore blue and green and brown. There was no confirmed strict color restriction. So I am not here to tell you Meghan broke a rule, because that specific rule did not exist the way people said it did. But something else was in that room, and you could feel it in the way people looked. Quick glances, subtle double takes. Even the cameras seemed to linger just a second longer than they might have otherwise. Not because anything was wrong exactly, but because 2 women in the same striking shade of chartreuse at a party designed around one of them, that creates a visual tension that does not need a rule to exist. Nobody said anything out loud, nobody made a scene. But sometimes the room tells the story, and this room told it clearly. And here is where things get really interesting, because this is where most coverage stopped. They reported the moment, they debated the dress code, and they missed the thing that actually makes this worth talking about. This was not the first time. Cast your mind back to 2019, a royal christening. The whole family gathered. Kate, Camilla, everyone in cream and white and soft neutral tones. The palette that tradition and occasion and simple consideration all pointed toward. The day was not about any individual. The color choice reflected that. Meghan arrived in full monochrome olive green, head to toe, matching fascinator, matching gloves, matching heels, the only bold color in the official photograph. And in that photograph, every eye goes straight to her. Not because she did anything wrong, technically. She was at a family event. She was dressed beautifully, but in a room full of people who had made one kind of choice, she had made a different one. And the camera, which does not have opinions, simply recorded what it saw. And then you look at the Netflix party photograph, and it happens again. 2 different occasions, 2 different years, 2 different women being celebrated, and the same visual outcome. The eye lands on Meghan. Now, to be fair, and I want to be genuinely fair here, not everything is intentional. Sometimes a look is just a look. Sometimes chartreuse is just the color you loved when you went shopping. Sometimes the christening outfit was chosen because it made you feel good, and nothing more complicated than that. But here's the thing about high-profile appearances. Everything is read. Everything is interpreted, especially when it keeps producing the same result. And the result, across years, across occasions, across rooms that were designed to center someone other than her, keeps being the same. The cameras land on Meghan. The conversation shifts to Meghan. The moment, whatever it was supposed to be, becomes partly about Meghan. Is that deliberate strategy? Is it unconscious habit? Or is it just the gravitational pull of someone who has spent years understanding that visibility is survival? Honestly, I think it's probably all 3, at different times in different proportions, and separating them would require access to Meghan's internal world that nobody has. What I do think is this. There's a conversation that has been running around Meghan for years, about presence, about visibility, about who owns a moment and who shares it, and whether those lines ever get blurred. And every time something like the Netflix party happens, every time the room shifts without anyone making a scene, without anything technically wrong being done, that conversation gets a little louder. Because this moment added fuel to it, in a way that the dress code debate never quite captured. Carey Mulligan went to Windsor Castle on March 31st. She received a CBE. She said she felt lucky to do a job she loves. She went back to work. She showed up at her own party 10 days later in her own color for her own show. And somewhere in the same room, in the same shade of chartreuse, the cameras found somewhere else to look for a moment. Was it coincidence? Was it one of those perfectly imperfect moments that just happens? Or was it something more deliberate in its design? I genuinely don't know, and I think that's actually the most honest answer anyone can give. But either way, it definitely got people looking, and sometimes that's all it takes.